Everyone, so welcome to the lesson. So today we're going to pick up where we left off before. So we will be talking about continuing to talk about the transport in plants. Okay, so it would be lovely if you could take out your notes, right? And I will share the notes here as well so that you can view it together. Okay, so last time we have discussed about the structures of the transport features in plants. Okay, so you should know by now, you should be quite familiar with the structures of xylem as well as the structures of phloem. Okay, and what are the cells, the tissues that are there that are present, as well as the associated functions. Okay, so we've looked at the structures, we've looked at anatomy, and today what we're going to look at is we're going to continue looking at how do actually the nutrients such as water and mineral, okay, particularly water and mineral salts, how do they actually get transported along the length of the plant, okay? Because when you actually water your plants, okay, you will actually water your plants into the soil, okay? But of course, from the previous topic that we've learned, that the water are actually used in the process of photosynthesis, okay? And where does photosynthesis takes place? It's in the leaves, okay? So how come the water that are in the soil can get up into the leaves? So there must be a transport system that will be in place, okay? And that's what we're gonna look at, okay? How the mechanics behind how they actually absorb the water. So okay, just use my glasses here. Okay, so if you look here, so the first part, okay, we can actually divide the process, the transport of water can be divided into three parts. Okay, so we can look at the root sections first, and then we're going to look at the second portion, which is the stem, and lastly we're going to look at what happens in the leaves. Okay, so we're going to divide it into three sections, into the root sections, the stem, and lastly the leaves. Okay, and how do they actually contribute to the process that we're going to look at. Okay, and the process that we're going to look at is actually what we call as transpirations. Okay, we're going to have a look, we're going to discuss what actually is transpirations, the definitions, the proper definitions, what is it later. Okay, so firstly we're trying to understand first what's going on, how do the water get absorbed from the soil into the xylem, into the root hair cells of the xylem. I'm sorry, into the xylem of the roots, okay, through the root hair cells, right? So as you can see from here, right, so you've got this diagram here, this illustrations, and it says there diagram showing the path of water through the roots. Okay, so this is essentially, if we have a cross sections of the root, this is how it should look like. And at the end, you can see this particular cell, which is labeled A here. This is what we call as the root hair cells. Okay, and as you should know that the roots actually have a lot of these root hair cells at the peripheral, at the regions yang siring-siring, yeah? They would have a lot of extensions, what we call as the root hair extensions, right? And recalling from the first topic, which is about the specializations of cells. Okay, you should know why do they have a long extension. This is because they want to increase the surface area to volume ratio. And why do they want to increase it? Because this is to allow for faster diffusions, faster movement of molecules, and in this case we're interested in is the molecules, the water molecules, so that they can be absorbed at much faster rate, right? And so this is the root hair cells. So we're going to discuss about how do they actually move about from the soil here, from the surrounding soil. They get into cell A, which is the root hair cell, and they get to the next cell, the adjacent cell at B, and they move to the next cell at C, so on and so forth, until eventually they actually arrive at the xylem vessel here. Okay, so that's what we're going to look at. Okay, so firstly, all right, so firstly, this is what actually happens, right? So if I So if you could see your notes here, and I will actually show my drawings as well here. If you just bear for a second. Right. So this is what actually happens in the, sorry. Right. So this is what happens in the root. Okay, so how do water molecules, right? So how do water molecules actually enter the xylem? Okay, so this is like the very first questions that we want to address is how do water molecules enter the xylem in the root? Okay, so as if you recall back the diagram, so you've got xylem here. So this is the xylem vessel that they have. So if I'll just illustrate it very schematically over here. Right, so these are the xylem vessels. And near the xylem vessels, as you can see from your notes as well, near your xylem vessels, they are actually surrounded by a lot of different types cells, which is the cortex region, if you remember. And there's just very much of their simplifications. Okay, so what I have done is this is the cell A, which is the root hair cell. This is cell B, C, D. This is xylem vessel. Okay, right. So this is the soil. Right? So this is actually what happens, right? So here you have a root hair cell. Okay, and this is the soil region. Right? So what actually happened is when you water the soil, okay, so what happened, the dots that I am making here, okay, the dots I am actually making here, these are the water molecules. Okay, so essentially what is happening is, if I could give a number, so number 1 there. So at number 1, what is going on there? So at number 1, you can see I have drawn, actually there's a lot of water molecules here. Okay, so in the soil, they would have higher water molecules. So in other words, if you have a higher water molecules, so in other words, it means that they have a higher water potential. So in soil, I would have higher water potential. Okay, and this higher water potential in comparison to where? Okay, so this one, we are actually comparing it to the cell here, which is the root hair cell. Okay, so inside the soil, you would have higher water potential, right? And in the root hair cell, in the cytoplasm of root hair cell, the water potential is lower. Okay, so this is what happens. So this is number 2. So in the soil, you have higher water potential. In the cell, you will have lower water potential. So as a result, okay, so number 3 here. Okay, so if I just zoom in for a bit so that it's easier, and then just okay. So because the water outside, the water potential outside is much higher compared to the water potential inside. So as a result, it creates number 3. So it creates, okay, it creates a difference in water potential gradient. Okay, so this is higher, outside is higher, inside is lower. So there is a difference in concentration gradient. So it creates a difference in water potential gradient. So as a result, number 4, okay, so as a result, this will happen. The movement of water molecules will actually take place. Okay, so as a result, okay, the water molecules from soil will then move into the cytoplasm of root hair cell. Okay, which is the arrows that are drawn here. That is the number 4 there. Okay, so you have in the soil, they have higher water potential. In the cytoplasm, they would have low water potential. This creates a difference in water potential gradient. And as a result, the water molecules from the soil will then move into the cytoplasm of the root hair cell. Okay. This process is via osmosis. Okay, so number 4 and technically number 5 is all there. Okay, so it's just so that you can see, again, this is how they get from the soil into cell A first. Okay, so they will get from the soil into cell A. How? Through these processes. Okay, now the thing is, if we look back at the question, okay, what we are discussing is we are trying to discuss how do water molecules enter the xylem in the root, okay? But so far, what we have discussed here is only entering the root hair cell, okay? But we want the water to go into xylem, okay? So we want this water here to go all the way there, right? So now, how do they actually do it, right? So how? Well, it actually uses the same principle that they use from here to here. They will actually use the same principle to go from this cell A into cell B. And they will use the same principle from cell B to cell C, to cell D, to cell E, and finally they will enter into the xylem. Okay, so how do they get from the root hair cell all the way to the xylem? Well, once the water actually enter into the root hair cell, cell A here, so as a result, once all of them enter here, so our banyak air masuk sini sudah. So once the air masuk arah sel A, now sekarang apa kami ada? Sel A ada banyak water. Okay, now cell A will have higher water potential. Compare dengan cell B. So cell B will have lower water potential. So same thing is happening. Higher water potential in A, lower water potential in B. So therefore, it creates a difference in concentration gradient. Okay, same thing, ada beza, sini banyak, sini sedikit, air arah A now masuk arah B. Okay, so once air arah B banyak masuk, so now they become banyak lagi. Banyak compare dengan arah C. So now arah C, ia kalau kami compare, it's now lower. So same thing, the same process, it will repeat over and over and over until eventually it enters into the xylem. Okay, so this process, so how can we use this explanation to answer this? You just say, you add on number 6. So number 6 there, this process shall repeat from the root hair cell until it reaches the xylem, passing through a series okay? So to make your life much simpler in explaining, so you use the same explanation 1 into 5, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, essentially the same concept is taking place at A to B, B to C, C to D, D to E, and E eventually into xylem vessel. And how would I word it? This is how I would word it. I'll just say at number 6, so how did I get from there? Is this process will then shall repeat from the root hair cell. So it will keep repeating from the root hair cell until they reach the xylem vessel, as it passes through all the cells in between, which are arranged adjacent to one another in the root cortex here. Okay, so all of this is happening all the way through via osmosis. Okay, and this process whereby water molecules is absorbed by the root hair cell and they will enter into the xylem vessel. And this is not just talking about one root hair cell. Okay, remember, in a single root, you have a lot, probably hundreds or thousands of root hair, okay, like these kind of cells. So all at the same time, a lot of the water molecules is being absorbed, and they will enter into the xylem from every direction, from every corner of the roots. Okay, so this is the first part, how the water molecules enter the xylem in the root. Right, so to go back here, if we go back to your, sorry, okay, so if we go back to this notes here, okay, so this is what we have discussed just now. Okay, so you know the water molecules, high amount of water molecules, so high water potential in the soil, low water potential in the root hair, which is the cell A, then it will cause a difference in water potential gradient. So the water molecules will enter into A. Then from A, the same thing happens. There is a difference between A and B. and then the water molecules will go into B and then go to C, so on and so forth until they actually reach the xylem vessel here. Okay, so that is the pathway of water through the root. Okay, how do they get eventually into the xylem? Okay, the xylem of the roots. Next, what we're going to look at is the transport of water and mineral salts up into the stem. So how do they actually go throughout the stem of the, okay, so that we know now how do they enter into the roots, okay, how they enter into the xylem of the roots. Now we want to know how do they actually go up through the stem network, right? And there are actually three forces which causes water to rise up a plant. So there are actually three, okay, the three important ones that you should be familiar with, okay? The first force is what we call as the root pressure, right? The second is what we call as capillarity. So capillarity, in other words, we also call it as cohesion, adhesion, tension, okay? So I'll if you could write down here slash capillarity slash cohesion dash adhesion tension. Okay, so I will explain later what each of those words means. And lastly is about transpiration pull. Okay, so there are three main forces which actually drives the movement of water molecules up through the stem. Okay, and we're gonna have a look. We're gonna try to understand each of the three. Okay, so first is about root pressure. Okay, so this root pressure is actually quite interesting because it links to what I have just explained now. Okay, so if you can see here, water from the soil, it says water from the soil enters the root hair cells via osmosis. So we know this, I've just explained to you. Okay, so for water from the soil, how do they get into? It's by the process of osmosis. And osmosis as a result of osmotic gradient between more concentrated root hair cell sap and dilute soil water. So it simply means it's via osmosis because of the difference in the water potential. Okay. And next bit, water is transported across the cortex of the root to the vascular bundle in the center via osmosis, also due to osmotic gradient across the cortex. So same thing, what they are saying is from the root hair cell, if you go back here, so ia cakap katanya from the soil into the root hair is by osmosis. And then from the root hair, it passes through, it reaches the vascular bundle, it reaches through the xylem, also by osmosis. Okay, and here the continuous inward movement of water into the xylem causes a hydrostatic pressure in xylem called root pressure, which forces water up the root towards the stem. So remember, I told you earlier, in your roots, you don't just have a single root hair. Okay, you actually have a lot of root hair cells which surrounds your roots, okay, which surrounds the plant's punya root circle. So if you think about it, all at the same time, every single root hair cell is going to continuously absorbing water. They will absorb, 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 absorb. Okay, so if you think of it, you can think of it in an analogy. Okay, you think about, let's say there are a lot of people. You have a hall. Okay, ada dewan sekolah tengah-tengah, and then ada banyak pintu masuk ada sekeliling dewan itu. And then semua orang memajal masuk arah dewan. Kalau semua orang memajal masuk arah dewan, and then apa akan menjadi? Akan ada pressure. Okay, there would be pressure, you know, ramai orang masuk kan, so ramai orang kamu pressure juga. Okay, so makin ramai orang, makin banyak pressure. And the same thing here as well. Okay, it's similar thing is happening. Okay, the continuous inward movement of water into the xylem, banyak-banyak air masuk, it causes a hydrostatic pressure in the xylem. what we call as root pressure. So because there's a lot of water molecules keep coming in, they keep coming in, then eventually it creates a high hydrostatic pressure. It simply means a high fluid pressure. Okay, so high fluid pressure, high water pressure. And this is what we call as a root pressure. And essentially what it will result in is now there is a lot of people coming in, they keep coming in at the same time. If you think of it like in a tube, okay, so if you have a tube, yang ada lubang siring-siring. Lubang siring-siring is the only place where they can come in, okay? New water coming in around lubang siring-siring. So since there is a lot more people, if you think in a tube, the only way that they can go now, kalau ia ke bawah na dapat because it's already arah tanah, okay, arah tanah. So the only way that they can go up now, they go now to relieve a bit of the pressure is they slightly go up, okay, and that's how it aids. That's how the plants, that's how the root pressure actually aids the movement of water through the stem, okay, through the xylem vessels in the stem, because the root pressure keeps coming in, so the water molecules have nowhere to go. They can't go back out because more people are rushing in, more water is rushing in. They can't go down because, you know, it's the ground. So the only way they can do is they can go up. Okay, so they can go up slightly. Of course, it's not like they are very much like climbing up, but it's like they are being squished and then suddenly it's just being pushed upwards. Okay, so that is the basis for root pressure. Okay, so it's quite simple, it's quite straightforward. Okay, you just think of it as people masuk dewan asak-asak, and then kalau pintunya yang jadi sering-sering is the only way in, the only way out is only to go up. Okay, so as more people is coming in, of course, they don't want to stay in that place. They want to go out. Okay, and the only way they can go out is by going up. Right? Now, the second bit. Okay, so the second bit is what we call as the capillarity. Okay, so capillarity or cohesion, adhesion, tension. Okay, so now, if you want to understand this, we need to know a bit about the biochemistry. Okay, and which biochemistry are we interested in? Is we are interested in the biochemistry of water. Okay, the properties of water. Right. So if I just go back to my whiteboard here, okay, so that was the first question that we had. I'm going to summarize it later, but this is the bit. Okay, so I want to explain about capillarity first. Cohesion, adhesion, tension. Okay, so this is what I want to explain first. I will summarize later the rest of the movements in the stem. Okay, so firstly, capillarity, cohesion, adhesion, tension. What the hell is it? Okay, now
it's 5 o'clock. In order
to understand this, remember we are trying to move. In this case, we are very much interested in the movement of water molecules. Okay, and as you should know from the chemistry, water is made up of molecule, hydrogen, and oxygen. So it's H2O. And in your chemistry as well, you should know how the water molecules are arranged in the configuration. So you have oxygen, okay, and you have, right? So something like this. It's not going to be accurate but it's something like this. I'm pretty sure you would be very much familiar with this as well. Okay, and as you should know, for water molecules, this is the outermost electron shell. Okay, so the outermost electron shell for a molecule of oxygen, sorry, so for an atom of oxygen, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you have 5, then you have 6. Okay, and for hydrogen, the outermost electron, it will consist of 1. Okay, so this is a dot and cross diagram. I'm pretty sure you know this from chemistry, and this is the way that they make it stable. Okay, and the X's and the dots are electrons. And as you should know, electrons, they are negative charge, right? And the inside the nucleus, okay, inside the nucleus of the atom, you have proton, which is essentially a positive charge, right? So I'm pretty sure you know this, okay? Now, when they are arranged, when the water molecules are stable, they are usually tend to be arranged like this, okay? So it's not 100% they are like this, but 90% of the time, they would be resting. When you test, they would find that this is how they look like, the arrangements of the electrons. So you have electron, 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 electrons. Okay, so electrons, electrons, electron, electron. You have electron, 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 electron. And as you know, electrons are negative, right? So if you see here, from these configurations, on this side, you have a lot of electrons being arranged at the near side here, at the hujung here. Okay, towards at the end here, you have a lot of electron. So if we think about it, so this is, it's going to be, since there is a lot of electron here, I know as a whole, water molecule is, they would have no charge because they are balanced. Okay. But since you have electrons here, electron, 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 so at this side here, they have a localized region here that would have a slight positive, sorry, a slight negative charge. So this is what we call as delta negative. Okay, so delta negative, and here at the region here, since the electrons are towards the center and the nucleus is more like facing upwards, as you see, the electrons are here, and the nucleus for this atom is much more to the outside. So, and you see, proton, the nucleus will contain proton, and proton is positive. So as a result, so what you would have at the end here, they would have a slight positive charge, delta positive, and here as well, so you have delta positive. So it's overall, water molecules is a polar molecules. Okay. Excuse me. So polar molecules, what does it mean? It means that they are slightly charged. Okay. So as an overall, they are not charged molecules, but they have a slightly positive charge near the nucleus of the hydrogen, near the nucleus of the hydrogen. So that's what we call it as a delta positive. So it's a slight positive. And here towards the O, we have a slight negative. Okay, and this is the properties of water. So water is essentially a polar molecules. Now, how does this to do with cohesion adhesion theory? Okay, cohesion adhesion tension. Now, remember, you have these properties and you are trying to transport water. Okay, so, and it's not just you have one molecule of water, obviously. So you would want to transport a chain, a lot of molecules of water. So as a result, what will happen is that you have, perhaps you would have these molecules of water. I don't know, this is a very, okay. So you have oxygen, hydrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, hydrogen, so on and so forth. And as you know, at oxygen, they have a slight negative. So this is a slightly negative, and this is a slightly positive. Okay, and this is slightly negative, slightly negative. This is slightly positive. This is delta positive. This is also delta positive. This is delta negative. This is delta positive, so on and so forth, right? So now, if you see here, right? So if I just, okay, yeah. So if you see here, you have a positive, you have a negative. Okay, so H positive, O negative, H positive, O slightly negative. So as from physics, you should know as well, positive and negative, what do? They attract. So what they will do, they will actually attract this molecule of water. So if you actually pull this molecule of water, since they are attracted, then they will actually go along. Okay, and this one now is, you have a delta negative here. You have a delta, slightly delta negative, and this delta negative, you have a positive there, and this will actually attract with the positive. Together with this as well, you have a delta negative, you have a delta positive. What they will do, they will get attracted. Negative, positive, they will get attracted. Okay, so this is what happens. So if you take one molecule of water, so what tends to happen is the molecules, a lot of the molecules of water will actually follow along as well. Okay, and this property is what we call as the cohesion property. So this is cohesion. All right, and how does this help with the movement of water? Well, of course, when one molecules of water go up, and then you have molecules of water, molecules of water, molecules of water. So they will actually, it's as if they are being pulled with the beads on a string. Okay, so it's like if you pull one water up, if you move one water, because of this property going on, the cohesion property going on, which is here, then if you pull one up, the below water will also go up. The below water will now go up, the below water will now go up. So it's like, you know, when you are trying to pull a string of water. Okay, so this is what we call as the cohesions, right? And next part is adhesion. Okay, what does adhesion mean? Well, for adhesions, remember water have this slightly positive, slightly negative as well. And water molecules, they move through xylem, okay, which is essentially a very, very narrow tube. Okay, narrow, hollow tube. Okay, so this is what happens. Okay, so if you have a molecule of water here, molecule of water, this is cohesion, right? All of those are cohesion. Now, what is adhesion? Adhesion is the properties in which water molecules, they are able to stick onto the walls. Okay, so this is adhesion. Okay, so this is actually quite familiar. This should be quite familiar to you when you are viewing the mercury in a thermometer. Okay, adhesion contohnya, example, mercury in thermometer sticks onto wall of thermometer forming meniscus. Okay, if you remember, if you see the thermometer, the clinical thermometer, you would have, when we view it, you should know they have a bit of timani. Okay, this is what we call as the meniscus. Okay, so here we are talking about the attachment points at siring-siring nato. This is how come they are able to stick macam tu. This is because of the properties of adhesions, right? So the fluid, in this case, the water, they tend to stick not just to the water molecules, not just to the water molecules below, but also they tend to stick onto the walls of the capillary, or the walls of the capillary tube, the walls of the xylem. Okay, and this, when you pull it up, they pull, it's macam gata. Okay, when you pull the gata, it actually provides tension. So that's why we call it as capillarity, which is a cohesion, adhesion, tension. So this is what it is. Okay, cohesion, adhesion is cohesion. The water molecules, they stick, they pull along a beads of water. They stick macam mana. This is cohesion, and adhesion is the sticking of water molecules to the sides of the tube. Okay, the sides of the hollow tube. Right. So that is cohesion, adhesion. Okay, so if we go back to, right, so if we go back to this notes, right, okay, so if we go back to this, right, excuse me, right, so this is what I have been explaining. Okay, so once in the xylem of the stem, water is carried upwards by a second force, what we call as capillarity. So in other words, cohesion, adhesion, tensions. And what is it? It is the movement in a thin column of water upward through a narrow xylem tube. Okay, and so how the water is able to move through the tube, it depends on these two forces. Okay, these two forces, what are they? They are the adhesive force, so the adhesion between, which is the attractions between the water molecules and the xylem vessel wall. Okay, so the water and the wall, yeah, as well as cohesive forces, which is between the water molecules itself. Okay, so between one water molecules to another water molecule. So if you pull, so the water below will also go up as well. Okay, that is the cohesive force. Right? And capillarity can be demonstrated by dipping the end of a capillary tubing in water. So you can see this, it's moving up. If you have a very narrow tube, if you have a straw, you dip it in, you can see how they slightly move up. Okay, so you can try it on your own, really. Okay, and xylem vessel has a microscopic bore, the diameter, which is responsible for carrying 20 centimeter or more up the plant. Because the xylem is very, very small, then the tubing is quite small, so therefore they're able to go up quite a bit of a distance, about 20 centimeters up. Okay, which is quite a lot if you are talking about the herbaceous plant, which is, you know, a grass or whatsoever, which is no more than no more than a meter or 50 centimeters, so on and so forth, like a very small plants. And then this would be quite a big factor. Capillarity might be a big factor in the movement of water. Okay, right. And last, the next forces, if you remember, there are three forces, right? So three forces transporting of water and mineral up the stem. Now we're talking about the stem, Masya. So root pressure, so they move in, it creates a bit of a forcing, so they can go up. Next is capillarity. Once they go up, you pull your macam beads and they also stick to the walls. And lastly is what we call as transpiration pull. Okay, so this force is perhaps the largest force but is responsible, the main force which is responsible in driving the movement of water up the xylem. Okay, so this is the one that gives that resulted in most of the transpiration process, the movement of water up. Okay, so now okay, I'll explain what transpiration is. We just go through first. What is it? So it says here the third force is a result of the evaporations of water from the mesophyll cells in the leaf and the removal of water vapor through the stomata of the leaf. And this process is what we call as transpirations. Now, okay, so now for transpiration is actually, it links with what happens in the leaves. Okay, so if you go back to, just bear with me for a second. Right here. Okay, so this is your leaf. As you remember, this is where photosynthesis takes place. And if you go back to your to the leaf structure, the cross sections of the leaf, this is also where you find the stomata. Okay, the lower surface of the leaves, they have a lot of stomata. And stomata, when they are open, they will actually allow gases to either go in or gases to go out. Okay, so when they are open during the day, it allows carbon dioxide to go in, but as a compromise, at the same time, it will also allow water vapor to go out. Okay, so the water vapor which are being produced, the water vapor that evaporates, that are available in the air spaces of the leaves. Okay, the water vapor that are found inside the leaves, now the water vapor, those water vapor go out. Okay, and that movement, when water vapor from the leaf, they go out from any other parts, any aerial parts of the leaves, for example, the stomata, they go up through the stomata. That process is what we call as transpiration. Okay, so transpiration is the movement of water vapor from the airspace of the leaf, out into the atmosphere. Okay, they lose water vapor. That is transpiration. Okay, and plants, they lose a lot of water vapor all of the time during daylight. How come they lose it a lot? Simply because the stomata during daylight, they will open. When the stomata open to allow carbon dioxide to go in, it also means water vapor from the inside can also go out. And when water vapor from inside going out, that process is what we call as transpirations. Right? So here, going back to this. Okay, so going back to here, the third force results of evaporations of water from the mesophyll cells in the leaf and the removal of water vapor through the stomata of the leaf. This process is transpiration. So when water vapor actually goes out of the leaf, so as a result, the water that goes out from the leaf, that water that goes out, now it needs to be replaced. Okay, and when it gets replaced, so it's as if that the atmosphere is sucking the water out. Okay, so when they suck the water out, so when they, when they pull the water out, as a result, the water, remember the cohesion property, they link, all the water molecules are all linked, right? So when one water molecules go kena pull, and then the neighboring water molecules will also get pulls along as well. So it's like this water kena tarik, the water here also kena tarik sebenarnya. Okay, so imagine this is water, 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 water. So you have two water molecules. If I tarik this, this also gets tarik. So it's like right? So it gets pulled along, it creates a suction, what we call as a transpiration pull. Okay, the pulling is because of the process of transpiration. This is happening because of transpirations. And the mesophyll cells take up water from xylem to replace those lost. So the water that are from the mesophyll cells from the intercellular airspace of the leaves, when they get sucked out, so as a result, those water that are present in the leaves, they need to be replaced by other water. Okay, and where do they get it from? They will actually get it from the xylem. Okay, the xylem that connects. So because and it will connect everything from the leaves, the xylem in the leaves, they will get the water from xylem in the stem. Then from the stem, they will get the water from in the roots, and from the root, they will get the water from the soil. So if you take one water from the leaf, okay, from one water out from the leaf into the atmosphere. So one water molecules from the stem will now go into the leaf, okay? And one water molecules from the root will now go into the stem. And then one water molecules from the soil will now go into the root. So it's like a cycle, okay? So it links everything together. Right? So water in the xylem is thrown up to the leaves to replace the water that has been taken, right? So they link everything together. And transpiration pull in particular relies on cohesive forces of water molecules as they move up the plant. So it's most, the transpiration, it relies quite heavily on the cohesive properties of water because they stick together. So that's why they're able to get along. Okay, and these cohesive forces ensures that a long, thin, continuous column of water and mineral salts in xylem vessels travels up the plant to the leaves, and this is known as transpiration stream. So, you know, if you pull one, the rest of the water molecules from the rest of the plant also get pulled along. So it's like a stream of water. So now it's macam kamu buka pipe, hose, simbolkan hose. So it just produces a stream of water going up. Okay, so it's kind of like that, right? And now here, out of the three forces, root pressure, transpiration, pull, provide the most force to draw up the tree. Okay, so if you have a very big plant, so such as a tree, which drives most of the transpiration process, which drives the movement of water, is the transpiration pull. Okay, the root pressure as well as the capillarity cohesion, they do play a bit of role, but not as much as transpiration pull, especially in larger plants such as the trees. Okay, so here, so this is just to illustrate what's going on. Okay, so the part that are taking, so just to recall, water, they enter, then they enter the root hair cell, passes through, they will enter into the xylem, and then the xylem, they will go up by cohesion, adhesion, they will stick onto the walls. And what's driving them up? Well, what's driving them up is because the water molecules, because what will happen, there's water vapor in the air spaces here. Water vapor here, when during daylight, the stomata will open. Okay, when stomata will open, water vapor from this region will then go out. The water vapor diffuse. Because the water vapor from this region is gone, because they have diffused, so as a result, the water vapor here, they need to be replaced. And how do they get replaced? They are replaced by the water from the surrounding cells. So the water from the surrounding cells will now evaporate into the air spaces here. And because the water from here, water from the cells have evaporated into the air spaces, now the water from the cells needs to be replaced. This water, where do they get it from? They get it from the xylem. So the water from here gets pulled here. Okay, so it's money. this water here gets pulled out. Then this water here replace that water here. And then water in the xylem replace the water in the cells. And then water from this xylem around the leaf get replaced by the water in the stem. So now the water here gone. The water from here will now go up to the leaf. And since the water from the stem is now gone, so the water from below will now go up. And since the water from below has gone up, so the water from here will now go in. Since the water from here has gone in, so this water here will need to be replaced. And since the water here has been gone here, this water now needs to be absorbed from the soil. Okay, so it goes along, it goes along kind of like, you are spraying water. Okay, the water essentially gets sprayed and all connects all the way to the soil. Okay, and that's why in a typical tree, in large trees, the trees, the plants can actually lose up to, I don't know, probably, I think it was how many liters of water every day. Okay, just from transpiration, they can lose up to few liters of water. Okay, just from transpiration itself. Okay, and few liters is quite a lot. Okay, especially we're talking about water vapor. Right? So here, transpiration, loss of water vapor through the stomata of leaves. Okay, so that's what it is. And how does it occur? So I have explained earlier. Okay, what are the forces? What drives it? Okay, so you just go through here. And usually transpiration occurs as long as the stomata are open for the uptake of carbon dioxide during the day. So transpiration will happen. So water will move up from the soil through the stem up to the leaves through transpiration pull during the day. So most of the water will actually go up during the day, okay? Because that's when the stomata is open. Okay, at night time, stomata is closed. Then as a result, the water movement would be very, very low. Okay, so less movement of water to go up. Okay, because they don't need as much water because they are not doing photosynthesis. Right? So I think that's it for now. There is quite a lot to digest. So I'll stop here. I will continue with the factors affecting transpiration nanti. Okay, in next lesson anyway. Okay, so I want to stop here first. I'll let you digest. Okay, I'll let you digest what is going on. So if you've got any questions, okay, so if you need more explanations, if you want me to explain a bit more in person with you, obviously you can text me, right? So you know what my numbers are. And you just have a bit of time, take your time in trying to understand this. I know it's quite a lot, okay? So until next time, so I'll stop here. I'll see you guys next week, okay? So bye.